Hello, property investors. Welcome back to another session with us around facilities management, utilities management. Obviously, the idea here is to empower you to have as smooth a journey when it comes to your property as possible. And maintenance and management of the property is a big deal when it comes to trying to make sure it runs smoothly. Today, we're focusing on this idea of DIY versus bringing in a professional maintenance team. So when does it make sense to bring in your professional guys, your professional contractors, as opposed to doing things yourself? So that DIY concept is very important. So for me, I think it all depends on your experience when you're taking this into account. But at the same time, it is super important for you if you are getting into property ownership, property investing, anything to do with property, you need to upskill yourself around the idea of doing a lot of these things yourself. Again, some people will be at different levels in their property journey. You might just be starting out. You might be sort of a lot more advanced. What generally tends to happen is as you build your portfolio, you start adding on skill sets. You start getting that experience to be able to do certain things yourself. And with that experience, you understand, well, what am I capable of doing myself and what am I able to outsource as much as possible? I really do encourage people, if you're starting off on your property journey, to try and do as much as possible on your own. And I think a good starting point is to get hold of this book. So this is called The Proud Homeowner, which is by Albert van Wyk, who is actually Marisha's father. And Marisha is part of the SAPIN community, so she's a property inspector, a great resource to tap into. But if you can reach out to Marisha and get hold of that book, I know they've got it on their website, with the Gauteng Property Inspectors website. So get hold of that book, because the idea is it gives you a foundation to upskill yourself. So, and what's great about it is, it teaches you around stuff that you can do yourself, but it also teaches you how to deal with bigger projects, bigger renovations, how to manage contractors, how to deal with snag lists, that sort of thing. I really do encourage that you get hold of that book just to upskill yourself, empower yourself to make these decisions a little bit more easily. And as I say, my starting point is try and learn how to do these things yourself. And there's two reasons for it. Obviously, if you can do certain things on your own, it saves a bit of money. So you're not paying for a call out, you're not paying for a contractor to come and sort something out. An example of that would be a leaking toilet or a running toilet, where the system itself is just letting water pass through it continuously. If you can do or repair that yourself, it is a huge savings, because really a plumber isn't needed to do that sort of thing. It can often just be a dirt blockage, it might just be a rubber seal that needs to be replaced. And for you to pay 500 Rand, 700 Rand for a plumber's call out, just for them to tweak something small and carry on with their day, versus you're there, you've got this problem, have a look at it, see if you can figure out the mechanics of it and fix it yourself quickly. I think there's huge benefit in that. And that's one of the biggest leaks that happen in the property. So not biggest, but the more frequent types of leaks that happen on a property is your sort of toilet system where the water is just running through. So I encourage you, learn how to deal with that sort of thing yourself. And then you obviously stack on top of that. It all depends on sort of your time availability. So a lot of property investors have not that much time when they're growing their portfolio. So when you're at that level in your journey, you've potentially built out a power team of contractors that you would put into place. And it's not really necessary for you to go out and repair a leaking toilet. You've got a team that can deal with that sort of thing. So you start outsourcing that as you get bigger. But at that point, you've got a little bit more resources as far as cash flow resources to deal with that. You're setting aside a little bit more of a budget for your maintenance to make sure that you're buying back your time in that situation. So for me, starting point is learn how to do as much as possible yourself. A good one to learn how to do is the plumbing. I like the idea of being able to do your plumbing yourself, and it doesn't need to be the major plumbing elements of it. You should know how to, as I say, repair a leaking toilet, repair a leaking tap, know how to remove and replace the rubbers in the tap seals, that sort of thing. Know how to remove the cartridges from a tap mixer and replace that cartridge. Those basic plumbing elements are super important for you to learn. The nice thing about plumbing compared to something like electricity or electrical work is when you turn off the tap or the main supply of water and you open the tap and the water's not running through, you know it's safe to work. Versus the problem with electricity is sometimes you can turn off a main circuit breaker and there could be a backfeed from somewhere else, which makes it a little bit more dangerous and higher risk of something going wrong. You could get electrocuted. So I kind of say, if you're not aware, or if you're not sort of upskilled enough or skilled enough to deal with electrical work, rather stay away from that when you're in this beginner phase of your property journey and in the DIY journey. But I really do encourage, from a plumbing perspective, there's less risk involved in it, where something can go catastrophically wrong. There's less risk of someone getting injured, killed when it comes to doing your plumbing yourself. So I do encourage you, learn how to do the basics when it comes to plumbing. And as you stack that, like, get involved in joining pipes, cutting pipes, and upskill, because it just helps you as far as being able to look at an installation and go, hey, something's not right there, or hey, that's Mickey Mouse. And in the same light, when you're dealing with a contractor who's doing those repairs, you're able to then pick it up and go, hey, that hasn't been done correctly. I need you to sort that out properly. Don't mess me around. And you can see already that kind of upskilling means it empowers you to not be taken advantage of as a property owner. You can then quickly pick up issues on your properties when you do turn to the professionals, and you know, like, no, you're lying to me. You're not telling the truth. You're not doing the right thing here. And you can challenge them on that. And I think being able to challenge them only comes from a perspective of confidence. So if you know what you're talking about, it's easier for you to challenge someone in that environment. Another great area to upskill yourself on, or to do your own maintenance, is painting. So you don't have to paint a whole building, but being able to paint one room is a great skill to have in your toolbox. So you're not having to bring in a painting team, spend thousands of rands to paint a single room, when you can just invest a little bit of after hours time to paint out a room, just to clean it up, get it going again. Painting isn't a hard skill to learn, but it does take a bit of practice. So I encourage you to learn that at least. So those are the two really important ones, I think, to upskill yourself around. Okay. And we're in an era where there's so many resources, like just being able to get onto YouTube and Google how to paint, how to cut, how to do that sort of thing is easy nowadays. So I really do encourage you to learn those basics. Now, you obviously need to evaluate the size of the project, and I really do lean towards the side of bringing in professionals for specific tasks. So like I've mentioned, the idea of electrical work, it makes a lot of sense to have a professional electrician come in and do the electrical work. Unless you have that skill already through your experience, it makes sense. Bring in a qualified electrician. There's no risk to the installation. They know what sort of circuit breakers, how many plugs can be on that circuit breaker. They're obviously aware of how to isolate, turn off the electricity so no one's going to get injured. And the last thing you want is for a section of your property to be overloaded and the property to burn down, and you've got to answer to say, hey, I didn't use a qualified electrician, and you're then to blame for something that's severe that goes wrong in that situation. So that's the first place for me to say, unless you've got the skill set, I really encourage you to use a qualified electrician. Then when it comes to doing any structural changes to a property, so if you're going to be bashing down walls in a property, you're trying to make it open plan, that sort of thing, you do need to consult some professionals around that. So a good starting point is making sure that you've got building plans done for those renovations that you're going to be doing. If it involves breaking down walls, that kind of change to the property. Some walls inside properties are non-load bearing, so meaning that they're not carrying the majority of the load of the property. Often that means it's not carrying the load of the roof on the property, or it's not carrying the load of upper floors in the property. So it's very important to be aware of that sort of thing, and don't take chances. So even if you think you know what it is, bring in an engineer. So if you bring in an architect to do the drawings and the plans for the layout, also do the same. Bring in an engineer, get them to come in and just say, hey, I'm going to bash down this wall. Please confirm that it's not structurally load bearing, and give me a letter to say it's okay for me to remove this wall. That covers you. So again, that's a great professional to have in your power team for that sort of renovation. When it comes to doing roofs, like replacing 1 or 2 tiles, if you're doing a replacement like for like, then there's no problem. So you're taking out a tile to replace with a new tile. So you're taking out a broken tile, replacing it with a new tile. No problem. Do that yourself. You're taking off a section of IBR roofing or corrugated steel roofing or zinc roofing. You're taking out one and you're putting in exactly the same. No problem. Do that yourself. But when you're starting to change the structure of the roof, bring in your professionals there. So have the roof engineering done to make sure that it can carry the load of the tiling, that sort of thing. Any other structures as far as wind impacts and all of that, have that done by a roofing engineer to make sure that the structure is able to hold the weight and it's able to, and it's the right structure for that area, that building. Okay, so that's super important. And then obviously, when it comes to roofs, make sure you're getting your trusses made by truss plants. So what's great about, or what's important about that is when they're joining the different pieces of wood, they're using the truss plates to nail and join those pieces of wood together. And those plates have to be pressure or installed under huge pressure. So when you go to a truss plant, they have specific equipment that is able to push those plates in to set those trusses correctly, as opposed to you having a DIY team on the site who is busy hammering those plates in. They're not using the correct pressure, that sort of thing. So there's risk of that failing. Okay, and you don't want to be in the position when your roof falls down on your tenants and you're now liable for that injury, etc. So I really do encourage you to go to the professionals in that stage. And likewise, if you are doing a renovation, make sure you're aware that how your contractor is going to be doing that. So you can't save money by cutting corners and be surprised when something goes wrong in the end. If your contractor is not qualified to do that specific type of work, you're liable for it if something goes wrong, because you've engaged them, you've incentivized them to cut corners for you, because obviously saving money for yourself is helping them to get the work. So you've got to be conscious of that and make sure you don't open yourself up to any issues in the future. Those are the main things for me. Obviously, the bigger your project is, the more important it is to bring in a professional team. So I talk about when you're doing these renovations, you're doing bigger extensions, that sort of thing. Don't just bash down walls without a plan, without drawings, without getting those drawings approved. Your architects will put those plans through the municipalities, get approval of them. So as you are compliant when you're starting your building. That's another element of it. If you do just build a renovation, build another building on your property, that sort of thing, and you haven't had pre-approval on those plans, once you've built the structure and you spent all that money and invested in the building, the municipality, if they haven't approved that in advance, there is the cases where they'll come in and say that that's an illegal structure, and they'll force you to tear that down at your cost, and you lose all the investment into it. So that's another point where it is important to bring in the professionals, get your architect to get that pre-approval from the municipality. Sorry, I see I was losing connection there. So walk the journey with the municipality to make sure that you are getting that approval in place during the journey. When you're doing new builds, make sure that new build is registered with the NHBRC. So they will then send building inspectors during the process of the building, which then covers you from a liability perspective as far as the structure and gives you a degree of insurance over that new build. So these are very important elements to bring in professionals. Again, structural changes, having an engineer come into play as well. Good starting point. And I think, again, I encourage you to get hold of this book, The Proud Homeowner, and I suggest give it a read, even if it's not your sort of primary interest. It just empowers you to have an awareness of all of this stuff. And Albert's done a great job of really packaging it in a way that it's easy for you as a beginner to understand and make sure that you're getting the best out of it. So thank you very much. That's all for today. Join us for the next one. We're here every 2 weeks, and all the best in your property investing journey.